Imagine stepping into medieval Europe, a time when even the simplest daydream could be seen as a sign of madness. Before we dive deeper into this fascinating era, take a moment to like this video and subscribe if you find value in what I share. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you tuning in from, and what time is it there? It's always intriguing to see our global audience. Now, as you settle in, perhaps dim the lights a bit. A soft fan running in the background can create the perfect ambiance for our journey tonight. In the Middle Ages, drifting off in thought wasn't merely looked down upon, it was practically a signal for the Inquisition to come knocking, armed with holy water and the relentless gaze of someone who hasn't blinked in days. If your thoughts wandered beyond the fields, scripture, or the burden of unpaid taxes, people might think you had ventured into darker realms. Picture yourself as a medieval peasant. You've spent your day breaking rocks, hauling mud, or engaging in some laborious task that defines an ordinary Tuesday. Your body feels worn out, almost begging for rest by the age of 19. Naturally, your mind seeks an escape. It drifts away, if only for a moment, to imagine savoring bread that isn't filled with gravel, sleeping past dawn, or even owning a second shirt. How does that sound to you? Imagine this. You find yourself drifting off, lost in thought. In the medieval mindset, this wasn't just a moment of daydreaming. It was a signal. Either a demon was whispering in your ear, or you were quietly responding. And let me tell you, the villagers of that time were vigilant. With no television, no hobbies, and no therapy to distract them, their favorite activity became diagnosing each other for signs of spiritual corruption, often based solely on facial expressions. Did you blink too slowly? You were possessed. Blink too quickly? Also possessed. Blink just right? Well, that was suspiciously normal. Priests, in particular, had a strong disdain for daydreaming. To them, the mind was a battlefield, and the devil was lurking, waiting for you to lose focus during your chores. Picture this. You pause mid-shovel, and suddenly Father Gregory appears like a character from a horror tale, demanding, "What enters your thoughts, child?" Nothing clears your mind quite like a priest's booming voice, cutting through your reverie. Children weren't exempt from this scrutiny either. If a child gazed at a butterfly, adults feared they were listening to fairy voices. If they stared blankly at the floor, parents worried elves might be trying to recruit them. In essence, medieval parents saw their children as being just one blink away from being swept into a supernatural cult. Isn't it fascinating to reflect on how perceptions of thought and imagination have changed over time? Even the nobility faced uncertainty. A prince gazing dramatically out of a window might be labeled melancholic. A princess lost in thought could be said to suffer from sorrow vapors. While it sounds sophisticated, this term actually masked a deep uncertainty. Essentially, they were admitting they didn't know what was wrong. Imagine fetching a bucket for the situation. In today's world, daydreaming is perfectly normal, yet in medieval Europe, it raised significant spiritual concerns. In a time when bathing happened twice a year, and medical issues were resolved by bloodletting with rusty tools, the simple act of drifting into your own thoughts was seen as a grave danger. Talking to oneself during the Middle Ages wasn't viewed as an endearing quirk or a sign of creativity. Instead, it was perceived as a crisis, a catastrophe, a spiritual emergency requiring the intervention of at least 3 priests, a bucket of holy water, and a neighbor who claimed to have seen the Virgin Mary in her chicken coop. People of that era didn't believe in harmless self-talk. No one was working through their thoughts or rehearsing a speech. If you were found murmuring to yourself without an audience, the conclusion was swift and dramatic. You were believed to be conversing with something otherworldly. Picture a villager catching sight of their neighbor, mumbling while sweeping the dirt floor. What would they think? Imagine a time when simply thinking could lead to suspicion. If someone appeared lost in thought, others didn't just feel sympathy, they feared the worst. They believed that a person deep in contemplation might be possessed. Tools would be withheld, and trust in the human mind evaporated. Any hint of an internal dialogue was seen as a sign of supernatural influence, raising red flags for those around. Clergy members were particularly wary. They viewed demons as cunning conversationalists, skilled at planting unsettling ideas in the minds of the unsuspecting. If you were overheard mumbling something like, "Where did I put that spoon?" it wasn't confusion that the medieval clergy perceived. Instead, they interpreted it as a plea to a powerful spirit, inviting trouble. Before long, you might find yourself caught up in a cleansing ritual, complete with chanting, flickering candles, and perhaps even a bystander fainting in the excitement. The situation was even more precarious for those who worked in solitude. Shepherds, woodcutters, and millers faced constant scrutiny. If someone spotted you talking to yourself while tending to your flock on a distant hill, they wouldn't think you were merely bored. No, they would assume you were receiving dark wisdom from goat-like entities. Even the sheep might have cast judgment upon you. Some individuals attempted to keep their musings hidden, trying to navigate a world where thoughts could lead to peril. Imagine a time when a simple cough or a soft hum could send whispers through a village. In medieval society, paranoia reigned supreme. People listened intently, squinting as they exchanged furtive glances, convinced you were uttering forbidden words. Once a rumor took hold, it was nearly impossible to shake off. In an era devoid of entertainment, gossip served as both social currency and a form of sport. The medieval mindset held that silence equated to safety. Words spoken without an audience were seen as invitations, and those who dared to invite unseen forces into their thoughts were not merely viewed as eccentric or stressed. They were labeled as spiritually leaky, dangerously open-minded, and in desperate need of intervention. In today's world, talking to yourself is a sign of being human. Yet in medieval Europe, it marked a departure from humanity itself. Laughter, too, was a collective experience. In those times, laughter was not meant to be a private affair. It thrived in communal settings, sparked by someone slipping in mud, being chased by a goat, or tumbling from a precarious height. The idea of laughing alone, without an audience, was simply unfathomable. If someone dared to laugh in solitude, without clear cause or witnesses, the villagers would react as if horns had sprouted from their heads. Reflect on this curious aspect of human nature. What does it say about our need for connection? Imagine standing on a medieval street, where the air is gray and chilly, with mud beneath your feet and a faint scent of animals lingering in the atmosphere. Everyone around you feels weary, underpaid, and achy, their knees burdened by the day's toil. Suddenly, a soft laugh breaks the heaviness, a sound that seems to float in from nowhere. Perhaps it's a memory of a joke shared in the alehouse, or maybe it's a fleeting thought of a world where your roof isn't leaking. In that moment, the villagers freeze, like deer sensing a lurking predator. To them, laughter is more than just a sound, it's a troubling sign. In this time and place, joy is rare and often viewed with suspicion. Happiness requires justification, often linked to misfortune or disaster. When laughter emerges from within, from a memory or a whimsical thought, it disrupts the expected order of suffering. Something invisible has touched you. As the lone laugher, you become a subject of intrigue, A passing monk might narrow his eyes, gripping his rosary as if it were a talisman against the unknown. A villager could slowly back away, convinced you are in league with unseen spirits who find humor in ways ordinary folks cannot understand. In this world, laughter isn't merely a reaction, it's a profound statement of spiritual unrest. Imagine it's nighttime. The air is thick with shadows, and laughter echoes through the stillness. If you find yourself laughing alone after sunset, it might feel like you're declaring, "I'm possessed, and everyone should panic." In those times, priests looked upon solitary laughter with suspicion. They believed that demons had a twisted sense of humor, one that preyed on the vulnerable. So, if you laughed by yourself, the clergy would assume the devil had shared a joke, and you had the audacity to find it funny. Before you knew it, a priest might be dousing you with holy water, as if you were a roast chicken being seasoned. Even more troubling was the idea that laughter could spread. If one person laughed alone, others might feel a pull of curiosity or amusement. Authorities of the time were keenly aware of the dangers of joy. They understood that laughter could lead to rebellion. Thus, in medieval Europe, laughing to yourself wasn't seen as a sign of happiness. Instead, it marked you as touched by something supernatural. Your joy was never truly yours. It was either deemed demonic or dangerous. In contrast, think about modern times. Crying for no apparent reason has become a common experience. Perhaps you're simply tired, feeling overwhelmed, or maybe you stumbled upon a sad dog video at an inconvenient moment. Yet, in medieval Europe, the spectrum of emotions was much narrower. A tear escaping your eye without a clear, socially acceptable reason would raise eyebrows and provoke concern. Imagine a time when your soul seems to falter, much like a machine in need of repair. In the eyes of a medieval villager, sadness follows a predictable pattern. If your crops fail, if a storm damages your roof, or if your child falls ill, those events align with a natural order. Tears are expected, ritualistic responses to life's calamities. But what happens when sadness strikes during the mundane? When you find yourself crying while fetching water, sweeping the floor, or stirring a pot that carries the weight of regret. In those moments, people don't see your tears as a sign of emotional turmoil. Instead, they interpret it as something more unsettling, a spiritual breach. It feels as if something deep within you has cracked open, and the fear of what might spill out terrifies them. Picture yourself in a bustling medieval marketplace. You're feeling overwhelmed and weary when someone jostles you with a large sack of onions. A single tear escapes your eye, a small glimpse of your humanity. Suddenly, the world around you freezes. A fishmonger halts his work, a monk drops his bread, and an elderly woman gasps dramatically, clutching her chest as if facing a great calamity, despite having done this several times before. In that moment, all eyes are on you. To them, you have transformed into something otherworldly. You aren't merely sad, you are afflicted. The vulnerability of your tears becomes a spectacle, leaving you exposed in a world that fears what it cannot understand. Imagine a time when physicians, who resembled astrologers wielding knives, believed that unexplained tears stemmed from melancholic humors. These humors were thought to be mysterious fluids swirling within the body, sometimes requiring a sharp intervention. When someone cried without reason, a physician would appear with a leech bucket, exuding the confidence of someone utterly unsure of their methods. Priests had their own interpretations. They believed that sudden tears indicated a demon had settled on your chest, squeezing your heart for amusement. To them, crying wasn't an expression of emotion, it was a release of supernatural pressure. They would rush in with holy water, murmuring prayers, while you attempted to convey that you were simply overwhelmed by life, exhaustion, and the less than pleasant conditions of medieval hygiene. Even your own family would panic. If you cried too frequently, they might treat you like fragile glass, unstable and cursed, always on the verge of creating a public scene. In this era, crying for no apparent reason was not considered a human response. It was perceived as a sign that your soul was leaking, with the devil lurking just beneath the surface. In the Middle Ages, privacy was a foreign concept. It wasn't recognized as a right, a preference, or even a fleeting mood. Instead, it was a time when your emotions were scrutinized and your tears were anything but personal. Imagine a time when privacy is nearly non-existent. The typical medieval villager resides in a cramped single-room home, shared by family members, a goat, 3 chickens, and sometimes a neighbor who has indulged a bit too much in ale. If you craved solitude, you were either of royal blood or had departed from this world. In such a setting, expressing a desire for alone time was not seen as a quest for introspection. Rather, it raised eyebrows and bred suspicion. Wanting privacy suggested something was amiss, something that would unsettle even the priests. Picture this: you step outside for a breath of fresh air, seeking a moment of clarity after a day filled with mud, noise, and close human contact. You stroll toward the village's edge, gazing at the trees, feeling the gentle breeze against your skin. Yet within moments, 2 villagers spot you, exchanging furtive glances and alerting the nearest authority figure, often a man with a notable hat. "What's he doing out there all alone?" they whisper. "Why is he lost in thought? What could he possibly need privacy for?" In their minds, the answer is never peaceful. Instead, they conjure images of dark rituals, soul corruption, or even conversations with forest spirits, entities they deem more sinister than demons, if only because demons had a semblance of manners. What does this tell us about the nature of solitude and community in that era? Privacy is synonymous with secrecy. Secrecy brings danger, and danger evokes witchcraft. If you found yourself alone too frequently, people would suspect you of conversing with supernatural beings. The medieval imagination was vibrant and often fearful. The forest teemed with creatures eager to lure lonely souls: fairies, spirits, demons, and elves, all possessing magical powers and little regard for personal space. Even a desire for solitude indoors raised eyebrows. If you sat quietly in a corner, gazing into the fire, someone might inquire if you were feeling touched, not by emotion, but by unseen forces from beyond. Closing a door behind you led villagers to assume you were hiding something. A simple walk without announcing it could spark multiple conspiracy theories before you returned home. Ironically, privacy might have been the key to preserving the fragile sanity of those living in medieval times. Yet, in their view, solitude was not a sanctuary. It was a perilous sign that you might be drifting away from the community and into the clutches of imagined creatures. Seeking space made you different, and in medieval Europe, being different was often the first step toward condemnation. Imagine living in medieval times, where the fears of famine, plague, and the sharp sting of hidden objects in the dark pale in comparison to one particular dread: the disruption of the village's sleep schedule. For these people, sleep is not merely a time for rest, it's a spiritual arena. If someone dares to sleep too much, too little, or seems to have enjoyed their slumber, the verdict is clear: they are cursed. Picture a typical medieval morning. As dawn breaks, the rooster crows with an intensity that feels personal, rousing everyone from their straw beds, which often feel like a nest of regrets. The entire village stirs with the sun, reluctantly leaving their dreams behind. But then there's you. For once, you sleep in, missing the sunrise. Suddenly, you become the focus of whispers and gasps throughout the village. He slept past sunrise. The shock is palpable. Someone nearly faints from the revelation. In their eyes, sleeping too long means that demons have taken you under their wing, not gently, but with a possessive grip. Medieval physicians, with their misguided confidence, believed that extended slumber allowed dark spirits to settle on the lungs. While this sounds dramatic, it's likely just a case of snoring. In this world, nothing screams lazy quite like enjoying a full 8 hours of sleep. Imagine for a moment the struggle of insomnia. It's more than just a restless night. It can feel like a battle against unseen forces. When you wake in the dark, unable to find rest, your mind races, contemplating a life filled with possibilities. Those around you might not see your struggle as simply sleeplessness. Instead, they might believe that something sinister has disturbed your peace. In medieval times, folklore is rich with tales of creatures that invade your dreams. Night hags, demons, mischievous elves, and even spirits of those you owe money to are all part of this haunting landscape. If someone hears you pacing in the night, they wouldn't think, "Oh, that poor soul can't find sleep." They would assume you are being tormented by dark entities, intent on dragging you from your bed. For them, a restless night wasn't just a sign of anxiety or discomfort. It represented a form of spiritual warfare. The norm was to collapse at sundown and rise at dawn, an unbroken cycle that defined existence. Deviating from this pattern was terrifying. They believed that sleep was a reflection of the soul. Too much sleep hinted at corruption, while too little meant that darkness was gnawing at your consciousness. So whether you find yourself in a deep slumber, tossing and turning, or simply yearning for a brief nap, the medieval perspective remains the same. You are seen as spiritually compromised, perhaps out of sync with the natural order, and possibly on the verge of becoming a wandering ghost. Isn't it fascinating how perceptions of sleep can shape our understanding of ourselves? Sleep often feels unrefreshing, almost burdensome. In medieval Europe, happiness stands out as a rare occurrence, not a natural state. It sparks concern and suspicion, often accompanied by a whispered prayer. The average person lived under a constant shadow of hunger, cold, taxes, and the unsettling thought that death could be lurking just around the corner. If you happened to smile without an apparent reason, people wouldn't assume you were simply in a good mood. Instead, they would think something had gone terribly awry. Imagine walking through a medieval village, a faint smile on your face because the sun has finally broken through the clouds, and the mud only reaches your ankles today instead of your knees. To you, it's a moment of simple optimism, but to the villagers, your cheerfulness seems almost otherworldly. A woman selling onions pauses mid-shout. The blacksmith lowers his hammer in confusion, and an elderly man crossing the road clutches his rosary, as if your joy might be contagious. In this culture, joy, especially spontaneous joy, raises eyebrows and invites scrutiny. Suffering is valued as a path to spiritual growth, and misery is seen as a mark of humility. Imagine a world where pain draws you closer to God, and cheerfulness is viewed with suspicion. In this setting, laughter is not a sign of joy, but a potential cause for concern. The villagers share hushed conversations about the deals made in the shadows, deals that seem to bind them to an unspoken code. If you enter the tavern with a grin, the bartender's response is anything but warm. He blinks nervously, steps back, and weighs the need for holy water as if your laughter might summon something sinister. Children, in particular, bear the weight of this paranoia. When they laugh and play, the villagers might whisper that a fairy has enchanted them, or worse, that they are marked for a tragic fate. In this world, children are expected to behave like small, anxious adults, burdened with chores rather than the carefree joy of youth. Even those of noble birth are not spared. A joyful noblewoman may be deemed overheated, her laughter considered a sign of imbalance that requires a remedy. Similarly, a cheerful knight might face accusations of pride or vanity, his warmth seen as a threat to the societal order. As you reflect on this, consider the weight of joy in a world that fears it. What does it mean to truly embrace happiness when it is so heavily scrutinized? Perhaps in exploring this tension, you might find a deeper understanding of what it means to be human. Happiness often comes with unexpected consequences. Instead of being celebrated, it faces scrutiny. People don't ask, "Why are you so happy?" They wonder, "What dark force allows you to feel this way?" Joy transforms from a blessing into a warning sign, waving like a medieval flag in the wind. In the Middle Ages, music was far from a solitary experience. It was loud, communal, and often a bit chaotic, with melodies that rarely aligned. You would hear music at festivals, weddings, funerals, and raucous gatherings, where half the crowd sang one song while the other half shouted a completely different tune. Music was a shared activity, not a private one, as personal enjoyment was often frowned upon. Imagine someone sitting alone, truly immersed in music, quietly and peacefully. To medieval eyes, this was unsettling. If a villager spotted someone humming while tending to animals or tapping their foot on a walk to the marketplace, they wouldn't think, "Ah, enjoying a tune." Instead, they would suspect that person has been enchanted, and soon they might wander into the woods and never return. Music was believed to possess power, not just artistic power, but something supernatural. As you reflect on this, consider how our relationship with happiness and music has evolved. What does this mean for you today? Imagine a time when songs were believed to summon spirits, fairies, and even the occasional mischievous demon. If you found joy in music alone, you were essentially inviting the mystical to join you, much like an unwary host leaving their door ajar. In the medieval world, there was a palpable fear of entities that could slip in unnoticed. Whether they were wolves, nosy neighbors, or supernatural beings with dubious intentions. Picture a medieval villager sitting quietly in a field, humming softly as they weave baskets. It seems innocent enough, yet to an observer, it raises alarm. A shepherd might drop his staff in surprise. A passing monk could cross himself so dramatically that he nearly tumbles over. A local woman might rush home to tell the priest that someone is experiencing a musical visitation, which in their terms meant the devil is trying to make him dance. Even playing an instrument alone was fraught with danger. A person tooting a flute in their hut was practically inviting gossip. The flute was often linked to wild forest spirits and seduction, two things that medieval folks feared deeply, as they had no means to defend themselves against either. And if someone dared to close their eyes while lost in the melody, well, that was the point of no return. Closing your eyes to music isn't merely about relaxation, it's a journey into a trance-like state, one that only saints, sorcerers, and those grappling with their own sanity dare to explore. Picture a villager, eyes shut and a serene expression on their face. To others, it might seem they're on the brink of an exorcism. Music in this context is acceptable only when experienced loudly, imperfectly, and in the company of many. Anything less hints at enchantment, corruption, or even impending doom. In medieval Europe, harmony didn't bring peace, it sparked suspicion. Nighttime was not simply the darkened hours of the day, it was a perilous spiritual battleground. As the sun set, villages morphed into unsettling scenes, reminiscent of horror films crafted by someone with a disdain for humanity. The darkness belonged to ghosts, demons, wandering spirits, witches, and wolves, figments of imagination that made life feel even more burdensome. So, if someone ventured outdoors at night, it wasn't just a matter of curiosity. They were practically inviting themselves into the realm of the supernatural. Picture a medieval villager stepping outside for a late-night stroll, perhaps seeking solace after a grueling day of toil in the fields. What thoughts might swirl in their mind as they navigate the shadows? You push open the wooden door and step into the darkness. Instantly, every curtain in the nearby huts twitches. Eyes peer out like those of owls, and whispers slither through the street. Somewhere, a dog growls, sensing that something unholy is unfolding. No sensible person would willingly venture outside after dark, and only two types of beings would do that: lunatics and creatures with glowing eyes. In the medieval world, it was believed the veil between the living and the dead grew thin at night. Spirits roamed freely, demons prowled, and fairies led unsuspecting humans into their strange night parades. If you were spotted wandering alone, villagers assumed you were either communing with these forces or being lured by them. The notion that you might simply enjoy the silence or need a break from your household was never entertained. A monk catching you outside at night might genuinely believe you had been seduced by a demon, not in a metaphorical sense, but literally, perhaps in a field. Night demons were thought to be incredibly charismatic, and medieval villagers were convinced that even the most ordinary-looking farmer could be taken by one if he dared to step outside for a breath of fresh air. So, as you stand in that darkness, what thoughts cross your mind? Are you drawn to the mystery, or do you feel the weight of caution that has echoed through the ages? Imagine a time when even your own family would be filled with dread if you slipped out after dark. They wouldn't think you were taking a peaceful evening stroll. Instead, they might suspect you had been possessed or cursed, perhaps even kidnapped by some unseen force. When you returned home, your loved ones would question you like detectives, starting gently, then escalating to urgency, and maybe even resorting to holy water. If you dared to say you needed some time to think, they would blink at you, bewildered, insisting, "No one thinks at night." After all, night was meant for hiding indoors, whispering prayers, and pretending not to feel fear. Anyone wandering outside was clearly at the mercy of something otherworldly. In this medieval world, reading was not a leisure activity. It wasn't seen as something relaxing or admirable, and certainly not encouraged. Most people in these villages viewed reading as an endeavor reserved for just a few: priests, scribes, and unfortunate children confined to monasteries. If you, a regular person, dared to pick up a book for enjoyment, it was akin to sprouting horns overnight. Even the books themselves carried an air of suspicion. As you reflect on this, consider how society shapes our perceptions of knowledge and curiosity. What do you think drives these fears? Picture this: a time when books are not just possessions, but rare treasures, often written in Latin, the language of those who prefer to keep their knowledge obscure. Owning a book is a privilege, passed down through generations, often left behind by monks who dedicated their lives to a singular manuscript about something as mundane as turnip farming or the pitfalls of excessive smiling. Now, imagine a medieval villager who develops a thirst for reading. This isn't just any curiosity, it's a spectacle that draws attention, curious, even alarmed attention. It's the kind of attention one might reserve for strange happenings in the woods or unusual births among livestock. Visualize a peasant seated outside, deeply engrossed in a book. Soon enough, neighbors gather, maintaining a cautious distance, whispering among themselves as if they've encountered a rare creature. "What is he doing?" they murmur. "He's staring at symbols. Is he attempting some sort of summoning? It seems like words. Oh no, he's a thinker." The situation escalates with each turn of the page. If he flips through the book too quickly, the villagers grow anxious, convinced he's absorbing dangerous knowledge, knowledge that could spark questions, and questions, in this world, are the ultimate threat. They could lead others to wonder why their hard-earned taxes are funneled to a local baron who seems to do nothing at all. In this way, a simple act of reading becomes a catalyst for change, igniting the minds of those around him. So what happens next? Could this thirst for knowledge unravel the very fabric of their society? Surprisingly, priests were not fond of amateur readers. While they read constantly, their focus was on approved texts, works filled with saints, plagues, and dire warnings. If you, a lay person, dared to pick up a manuscript that strayed from the religious, you would notice the priest's eyes narrowing into slits. You might catch him murmuring something like, "The devil enters through literacy," as he clutched his rosary with a grip that suggested distress. The situation was even more dire for women. A woman who indulged in too much reading was seen as mysterious, unpredictable, and dangerously so. She might learn something new, think critically, or, heaven forbid, become aware of the unsanitary habits of men and decide to rebel. Reading in private, frequently, or with joy, marked you as mentally unstable, or worse, intellectually curious. In the medieval mindset, those two conditions were indistinguishable. In medieval Europe, even the choice to drink water could signify that something was fundamentally wrong with you. This wasn't just a metaphorical issue. It was seen as a literal, medical, spiritual, and cosmic deficiency. Water was treated as a last resort, akin to scraping mold off old bread and pretending it was seasoning. So if you chose to sip from a cup of plain, unboiled, and suspiciously cloudy medieval water, the villagers wouldn't concern themselves with your health. They would simply assume you were beyond help. You are surrounded by a world that thrives on beer. In medieval times, beer comes in many forms: weak, strong, expensive, or even questionable, with a taste reminiscent of hay. Yet it doesn't matter. Beer is hydration, tradition, and a means of survival. It serves as the medieval equivalent of a multivitamin, something you consume because everything else seems dangerous. Water, on the other hand, is a different story. It flows through villages, picking up diseases like a collector's item, and always carries a hint of livestock, even when there are no animals in sight. Picture this scenario. You're laboring in a field on a sweltering day, sweating away the last bits of joy. Your fellow peasants pull out their small jugs of ale, the safe and trusted beverage of the time. But you, with a sense of confidence, reach for a ladle of water from the communal bucket. Suddenly, every eye turns toward you. A man drops his hoe in disbelief. A woman gasps so loudly that her chicken scurries away in fright. A child stares in awe, as if witnessing a sorcerer mishandling his spells. To them, choosing water is unfathomable. It signifies a grave misunderstanding of survival, or perhaps a desire for self-destruction. In a world where death is a daily companion, their overreactions are immediate and intense. You realize that in this medieval landscape, every choice carries weight, and your decision to sip water is seen as a bold challenge to the norms. Imagine your friends gently taking your hand away from that bucket. Your family urges you to lie down and rest, concerned for your well-being. Nearby, old women whisper that perhaps your mind has become overheated under the sun. Someone might even rush to fetch a priest, just in case the devil has led you to sabotage your own hydration. Yet the priests aren't much calmer. They believe that demons can subtly encourage self-harm, and nothing seems more questionable than choosing medieval water over the safety of medieval beer. A priest witnessing such a scene might sprinkle you with holy water, ironically, the same water they would never consume themselves. They pray loudly, hoping to drown out the murmurs forming around you. In the medieval mindset, beer was a lifeline, while water signaled a troubling reality. Anyone who chose water willingly was viewed as cursed, delirious, or dangerously naive. It suggested a mental unraveling of significant proportions. Drinking water wasn't refreshing, it was alarming. In medieval Europe, kindness toward animals was not seen as a sign of compassion or a gentle spirit. It certainly did not indicate a future veterinarian, an occupation that back then simply didn't exist. Instead, you might find someone guessing what's wrong with your cow, a far cry from the empathetic care we envision today. In the medieval world, showing kindness to animals often led to harsh labels like witch or heretic. Animals were not regarded as pets, rather they served practical purposes. Cats were there to hunt mice, dogs barked at intruders, and chickens functioned as morning alarms. When someone treated an animal with unexpected affection, gently stroking its fur, speaking softly, or sharing scraps of food, villagers didn't see this as compassion. Instead, they viewed it as a sign of sorcery. Picture this: feeding a stray cat is a simple, kind gesture in today's world. Yet, in a medieval village, if a cat accepted food from your hand, it felt like entering into a supernatural agreement. People would stop in their tracks, pointing in disbelief. Cats were already viewed with suspicion, as if they possessed an understanding beyond the ordinary and showed little respect for humans. If a cat chose to trust you, it suggested that dark forces were at play. In this context, no sensible animal would willingly approach a human without the influence of magic. Dogs, too, faced scrutiny. If a dog followed you around the village, it wasn't seen as endearing. Instead, it raised eyebrows and sparked whispers. The bond between humans and animals was fraught with fear and misunderstanding, where even the simplest acts of kindness could be misinterpreted in the shadows of superstition. Imagine a time when the bond between humans and animals was viewed with suspicion. They believed that someone could control beasts, and that thought was unsettling. A loyal dog raised eyebrows, for true loyalty required an emotional connection. Yet in medieval times, peasants had no leisure to forge such bonds. The mere idea of spending time with an animal instead of toiling away was seen as unnatural. Whispering to a horse for comfort, witchcraft. Complaining to a chicken while gathering eggs, that was deemed demonic communication. Confiding in a goat during a moment of vulnerability, you might as well have announced to the village that you were straddling the line between this world and a dark one. Even more alarming was the notion of rescuing an animal. If you nursed an injured bird or cared for a sick dog, villagers would suspect you of dabbling in forbidden healing. Only gods, saints, and perhaps some dubious barber surgeons were considered fit to heal. If an animal thrived under your care, it only heightened their anxiety. In medieval Europe, acts of kindness were misconstrued. Kindness was seen as influence, and influence was power. And power over creatures? That was terrifying. Being gentle with animals didn't signify a good heart. Instead, it suggested you were just a broomstick away from a witch trial. As you reflect on this, Consider how perceptions of kindness and power have evolved. What does it mean to show compassion in our own lives today? In medieval Europe, the act of collecting herbs is far from a simple hobby. It isn't a leisurely pastime or a soothing way to ease anxiety. Instead, gathering herbs could quickly lead your neighbors to believe you had a direct connection to the devil. Nothing sparked more fear among medieval villagers than someone knowledgeable about plants. Their relationship with nature was steeped in apprehension. Some plants held the power to heal, while others could be deadly, and most simply tasted like dirt. Picture a woman in the early morning light, kneeling in a field, carefully snipping rosemary. To her, it's just a way to enhance her humble stew, which consists of mostly barley, a dash of hope, and a hint of dirt. Yet, to the villagers watching from afar, the scene transforms. They see a solitary figure shrouded in mist, gathering unusual greenery as if she's concocting a forbidden potion. What do you think this moment reveals about the fears and beliefs of that time? As you reflect on this image, consider how perceptions can shape reality. As she rises, you notice that half the town has already decided she is at least 80% witch. Even the most innocent plants spark suspicion. Chamomile, meant for sleep, is seen as an attempt to induce visions. When she starts cooking, they assume she is crafting a spell to weaken a rival. Peppermint for stomach aches? It's labeled a healing potion, which is illegal unless performed by someone with a vague title like local healer, barber surgeon, or an elderly woman who once witnessed a miracle, though she might have just been imagining things. Isn't it ironic? Medieval healers regularly used herbs, yet their eccentricities were tolerated due to their official status. But anyone outside that small circle faced suspicion. A peasant man gathering herbs was deemed to be dabbling in forbidden practices. A peasant woman? She was already halfway to the bonfire. Even drying herbs indoors raised eyebrows. Bundles of plants hanging from the ceiling might seem practical to you, but in medieval times, they sent ominous signals. Neighbors would peer through your window, spot the bundles, and immediately assume you were in league with beings that only appeared after midnight. To them, herbs were not just plants, they were symbols of something much darker. You find yourself in a world where knowledge can be perilous. Fernade, in medieval Europe, understanding the natural world branded you as a threat. To act upon that knowledge made you guilty, and to enjoy it, that was nothing short of witchcraft. Being left-handed wasn't just an innocent trait. It was seen as a spiritual misalignment, a warning sign that you were viewed with suspicion from the moment you entered the world. Even the very language you spoke betrayed you. The Latin word for left, sinister, carried a weight that people took to heart. If you happened to favor your left hand, you were already marked as guilty of an unknown crime. Just imagine yourself as a child in this era, instinctively reaching for a spoon or perhaps a piece of stale bread with your left hand. Your mother gasps as if she's witnessed a grave sin. Your father stares at you bewildered, as though you've sprouted antlers. The village priest, ever alert for signs of corruption in every newborn, suddenly appears behind you, moving with the stealth of a cat and the anxiety of someone who believes demons are out to get him. The issue isn't the hand itself, it's what that hand suggests about you. Imagine living in a time when the world feels like a cosmic struggle between good and evil. Medieval people perceived their existence as a battleground, with God and the devil vying for your soul, much like two inebriated individuals fighting over the last piece of cheese. If you were left-handed, it was believed that the devil might be gaining the upper hand. This notion didn't stem from any real evidence, but rather from a mindset steeped in panic and superstition. Teachers during this era were particularly harsh enforcers of these beliefs. If you found yourself in a medieval classroom, your teacher's mission was clear: ensure every child wrote with their right hand, often through extreme measures. Left-handed students faced not encouragement, but discipline that was physical, dramatic, and frequently loud. Imagine being smacked on the left hand with a stick, or having your hand tied behind your back as you were lectured about the perils of evil symmetry. It didn't matter if your right-handed writing resembled the scrawl of a tipsy goose. What truly mattered was conformity. Even the most mundane tasks were scrutinized. Stirring a pot with your left hand could lead to whispers that the stew had turned unsettling. If you dared to pet a cat with that cursed hand, villagers might suggest the animal was bewitched. Whether it was holding a tool, carrying a bucket, or simply greeting someone, using your left hand could make others recoil in fear or pity, leaving you to navigate a world filled with suspicion and misunderstanding. Left-handedness was often regarded as a flaw, a threat, and even a cosmic inconvenience in medieval times. This perception stemmed not from any harm it caused, but from a deep-rooted fear of anything that deviated from the norm. In an era where the unknown was more terrifying than demons, plagues, or harsh weather, difference was met with suspicion. During the Middle Ages, calmness was not seen as a virtue. It was neither admired nor respected. In fact, it was often viewed with skepticism. To the medieval mindset, being calm amid chaos was one of the most suspicious states a person could embody. Life was expected to be a tumultuous whirlwind, filled with fear, discomfort, hunger, and disease. The constant awareness that anything could lead to death before the evening meal only heightened this sense of urgency. If someone appeared calm during such turmoil, they were not considered wise. They were seen as broken. Picture a bustling medieval village at the height of daily chaos. Chickens dart through the streets as if they're racing against time. A goat munches on someone's laundry, while a baby cries, having already lost hope just 3 days into life. Nearby, a blacksmith berates his apprentice for being too noisy. Smoke wafts from chimneys, carrying the scent of yesterday's soup, which doubles as today's and will likely serve again tomorrow. Life, in this moment, is a cacophony, a loud, muddy mess filled with both noise and unpredictability. Picture someone standing calmly amidst chaos. They exude serenity, breathing deeply, much like a monk who has discovered meditation long before its time. To us, this might represent self-control, but in medieval times, such calmness was seen as something far more sinister. People of that era believed that fear was the fundamental human emotion, a trait woven into our very souls. If someone appeared unafraid, it was thought they had either lost their sense of danger or, even worse, had made a pact with it. Imagine a fire breaking out. Panic ensues as everyone screams and rushes about, desperately trying to douse the flames. Yet, in the midst of this frenzy, the calm individual stands still, observing the chaos with an unsettling tranquility. In that moment, two thoughts arise. Either this person ignited the fire, or they possess some supernatural ability to rise above the turmoil. Even in smaller crises, like a sudden storm, the sighting of an unusual creature, or whispers of a wandering spirit, remaining calm was met with suspicion. If you chose not to join the collective fear, you were viewed with doubt. The prevailing belief was that if everyone else was terrified, you should be too. How does this perspective resonate with you? Emotions in the past often came from sources that felt unnatural. Calmness, in particular, raised suspicion, especially among priests. They viewed a serene demeanor as a sign of spiritual interference, as if fear was being held captive. To them, only saints or those possessed could remain calm amidst chaos, and saints were incredibly rare. In medieval Europe, calmness wasn't seen as enlightenment or strength. Instead, it was a red flag, a warning that one's soul might be too pure or too compromised for everyday life. In either case, it was met with distrust. When we think of Viking marriages, we often picture romantic candlelit proposals on scenic cliffs. However, the reality was quite different. There were no poetic speeches or moments of kneeling unless someone had to pick up a dropped sword. And instead, marriage served as a strategic alliance between families. Love was a nice bonus if it happened to bloom before death. What truly mattered were the clans behind the bride and groom, their land, their cattle, and the political power they could forge together. A Viking marriage often began long before the couple even met. Two fathers would negotiate like seasoned diplomats, discussing boundaries, inheritance rights, histories of conflict, and even grievances from decades past, such as who had stolen whose sheep 20 winters ago. In Norse society, every detail of marriage negotiations is scrutinized. Marrying someone intertwines your family's fate with another clan's. If the prospective family has a history of feuding or misfortune, you might reconsider offering your daughter. A pivotal aspect of this negotiation is the mund, the bride price paid by the groom's family. While it may sound like a purchase, it's actually a form of compensation for the labor and skills that the bride's family will lose. Viking women contribute significantly through farming, weaving, and managing households. Losing one of them translates to a substantial loss of value. The mund acknowledges the bride's importance and indicates that the groom's family is stable and honorable enough to enter this union. Once both families agree on the terms, the marriage is established, but the couple's personal feelings are also considered, albeit theoretically. Although families typically arrange these matches, marriage in Viking culture isn't viewed as a prison sentence. The bride must accept the marriage agreement. While her negotiating power might feel as limited as trying to argue with a thunderstorm, her voice still holds weight. She has the right to refuse a dangerous or dishonorable match, and sagas recount instances where women exercise this right. As you reflect on these traditions, consider the strength and agency that women held within this societal framework. Their choices, though often constrained, were significant and impactful. Would you have the courage to stand firm in your beliefs? Imagine a time when marriages were not just personal unions, but powerful alliances. When agreements were made, they resonated with the weight of history and obligation. In this world, families became partners, blood feuds ended, and trade routes flourished. Two clans that once regarded each other with disdain might suddenly act like the closest of friends, all because they were now connected by marriage. This is the reality of Viking marriage, a far cry from fairy tales. It was a political contract steeped in honor and duty, often accompanied by the occasional tense glance exchanged across the settlement. If we view Viking marriage as a contract, we must consider the dowry and bride price as the financial signatures that solidified this agreement. These were not mere tokens or polite gestures. They were practical assets designed to protect the bride and ensure her future. They also served to prevent either family from acting foolishly once the festivities faded. Let's delve into the fear, or dowry. This was the wealth that the bride's family provided. It could include clothing, jewelry, livestock, loom weights, household keys, and sometimes even land rights. It's crucial to understand that this was not a gift to the groom. This was the bride's wealth, and she retained full legal ownership of it. Imagine stepping into marriage today with your very own treasure chest, a personal safeguard that your partner cannot access without facing public embarrassment or perhaps even a duel. This was the essence of the Viking dowry. Then there's the munda, a bride price that the groom's family paid. To modern ears, it may sound like a questionable transaction, as if a wife is being bought at a discount. Yet in Viking culture, this practice held a deeper significance. The munda demonstrated that the groom's family was serious, honorable, and financially stable enough to forge this alliance. If a man couldn't meet this requirement, the marriage simply wouldn't take place. While Viking women might not have had the final say in choosing their husbands, fate often steered them away from pairing with financially irresponsible men. This is where things become particularly intriguing. All these assets ultimately served to protect the woman, not the man. The dowry remained with her throughout the marriage, and the bride price contributed to her security and her children's inheritance. Should her husband act dishonorably, perhaps through infidelity, failing to provide, or provoking conflict with her family, she held significant leverage. This was legal, economic leverage that could make even the most fearless warrior reconsider his decisions. Viking men were well aware of this dynamic. A woman entering marriage carried her keys, literal iron keys, symbolizing her control over the household's wealth. As you reflect on these customs, consider the layers of power and protection they provided. Wouldn't it be fascinating to explore how these traditions shape our understanding of relationships today? In Viking society, women often held significant roles. They managed food supplies, valuables, and income from weaving, all while wielding domestic authority. If a husband were to die or disappear during a poorly planned raid, an all too common occurrence, the dowry and bride price ensured she wouldn't be left destitute. This reality reveals a nuanced truth. Despite the patriarchal structure, Viking women were far from powerless. Their wealth accompanied them, and their rights were safeguarded. And if a husband overstepped his bounds, well, that's when things could become quite intriguing. But we'll touch on that later. Before a Viking marriage contract became official, there was a process akin to courtship, though calling it that might be a stretch. Vikings didn't date as we understand it today. There were no romantic beach strolls, awkward dinners, or waiting 3 days to text. Instead, the courtship involved family negotiations, subtle signals, public reputation, and the occasional heroic deed, such as slaying a formidable beast. While most Viking couples had their matches arranged by their families, personal attraction and preference still played a role, albeit quietly, like a nervous squirrel hiding away. Imagine a young man eager to impress. He might lend a hand to a woman's father, showcasing his strength and skills at gatherings. In response, a young woman may drop subtle hints through her actions. Perhaps she offers him a drink first, sits beside him during feasts, or demonstrates her prowess in household tasks. After all, nothing captures attention quite like showcasing your butter-churning abilities. However, arranged marriages did not equate to forced unions. A woman had the right to voice her objections, and in saga literature, these objections often come with passion, sometimes calm, sometimes fiery. If a suitor has a reputation for violence, incompetence, or dishonor, or even if he simply carries an unpleasant odor, she is well within her rights to turn him down. Wise families understand this, for ignoring a strong-willed Viking woman could lead to serious consequences. Men, too, must prove their worth. Wealth, honor, and connections play crucial roles in their desirability. A man without land or cattle struggles to be seen as a suitable match unless he possesses remarkable skills, perhaps the kind that allow him to return from a raid with treasure enough to dazzle the sun. Viking masculinity transcends mere physical strength. It embodies responsibility and the ability to safeguard a household. Courtship in Viking culture often included the practice of gift giving, jewelry, intricately carved bone pieces, or finely crafted tools served as tokens of affection. Yet, there's an intriguing twist to this tradition. Presenting a gift to a woman without her family's blessing could suggest a secret relationship, potentially igniting feuds. Thus, Viking dating required not just charm, but also a strategic approach. One misstep could lead to romantic intentions being misunderstood as a political threat. What's truly fascinating is the tender side of Viking pre-marriage life, which unfolded through conversation. Men and women engaged in private discussions, sharing thoughts and testing their compatibility. While it may not have been poetry, it was genuine. In a society grounded in honor and survival, emotional intelligence played a crucial role. Once the clans shook hands and the ale began to flow, those two individuals were bound together for life, or at least until a divorce was sought. A Viking wedding was far from a quiet, elegant ceremony, adorned with flower arches and neatly arranged napkins. It was a grand community event filled with drinking, speeches, ritual objects, and enough symbolism to impress even a modern therapist. These celebrations could last several days, depending on the family's wealth, and were so significant that even those who had their disagreements were expected to attend and feign happiness. As you reflect on these customs, consider the depth of connection and community that shaped Viking relationships. Wouldn't it be intriguing to explore more about how these traditions resonate with our own? The ceremony unfolds with a profound sense of ritual. You witness the bride and groom stepping away from their former selves. The groom experiences a symbolic cleansing, often through bathing, which is significant. Viking men, it seems, valued cleanliness more than their medieval European counterparts. The bride, too, undergoes her transformation. This sometimes involves removing her maiden circlet, a delicate headpiece worn by unmarried women. Her hair might be rebraided, a gesture signifying her maturity and the new responsibilities she is about to embrace. Imagine this as the Viking equivalent of preparing for a big day, rich in symbolism, yet devoid of modern hairstylists. Weapons take center stage, as you might expect. The groom typically carries a sword, often a cherished family heirloom passed down through generations. In a meaningful gesture, he presents this weapon to his bride, signifying his trust in her to protect their home. In return, she bestows gifts that represent domestic authority, such as keys. While gifting a sword today might raise eyebrows or even prompt a call to security, in Viking culture, it symbolizes the ultimate romantic commitment. The ceremony culminates in the exchange of oaths witnessed by others. Vikings, after all, regarded promises with the same seriousness as their feuds. A couple makes a vow of loyalty and cooperation, sealing their promise with a feast attended by their families. These oaths may not be poetic, but they hold great weight. In a society where reputation is crucial for survival, breaking a marriage vow can lead to gossip that lasts for decades. The feast is where the celebration truly comes alive. Laughter and joy flow like rivers. Songs fill the air, stories are shared, and Viking poets recite verses that honor the new alliance. If the food is delicious and the guests are well behaved, a wedding can become legendary. Once the public rituals conclude, the private sealing of the marriage follows. The bedding ceremony. Families guide the couple to their room, lighting candles and placing symbolic gifts before discreetly exiting, ideally before any awkwardness arises. At this moment, the alliance is not just an agreement, it is solidified. With the wedding complete, married life begins, and that's when social expectations, household dynamics, and gender roles become particularly intriguing. After the feasts have ended and the last of the mead is consumed, Viking married life unfolds, revealing a structure that often surprises. Contrary to Hollywood's portrayal of Vikings as chaotic, axe-swinging warriors, their marriages were far more organized than one might think. Have you ever wondered what life was truly like for Vikings beyond the tales we hear? Imagine stepping into a Viking household, a space that functions like a miniature kingdom. Here, the true ruler is often the wife, while the husband holds the title of head of the family and represents the household in public matters, such as politics, trade agreements, and even raids. The dynamics shift once he crosses the threshold of their longhouse. Inside, the wife wields significant power. She possesses the literal iron keys, which symbolize her control over all domestic resources. The locked chests filled with valuables, food supplies, textiles, tools, and trade goods are all under her purview. If her husband seeks access to any of these items, he must ask her permission, underscoring her role as the heart of the household. The Viking wife is expected to manage the farm, organize labor, distribute food, oversee weaving workshops, direct servants, and maintain household diplomacy. She acts as the economist, logistics officer, and often the unofficial judge of disputes. In the event of her husband's death, travel, or disappearance on a raid, an all too frequent occurrence, she seamlessly assumes control of the entire estate. Viking law recognizes her as a capable property manager, a stark contrast to the views held by many later medieval societies. As you reflect on this dynamic, consider the strength and resilience of these women who held the fabric of their communities together. Wouldn't it be fascinating to explore more about their lives and the legacies they left behind? In the world of the Vikings, a husband's role extended far beyond the dramatic act of swinging a sword at passing boats. He engaged in external affairs, defending the farm, negotiating with neighbors, maintaining alliances, and providing for his household through farming, trading, or even raiding. In a thriving marriage, these roles complemented each other beautifully. The wife managed the internal aspects, while the husband took care of the external responsibilities, and both were vital to the household's success. Without one, the entire structure could crumble, much like a poorly constructed longhouse caught in a fierce windstorm. Contrary to popular belief, Viking couples often shared cooperative and respectful partnerships. Sagas tell tales of husbands who consulted their wives on important decisions, sought their advice, and sometimes even altered their plans based on her insights. A wise man listened to his wife, while a foolish man who ignored her often faced consequences in reputation, wealth, or even in the form of unexpected domestic challenges. Daily life for the Vikings was not glamorous. It was filled with hard, relentless work. Yet this labor was shared, fostering a partnership that was often stronger than what many modern people might envision. While Vikings did not idealize marriage, they held high regard for competence, loyalty, and mutual support. And when that loyalty was betrayed, Viking women had options, sometimes quite dramatic ones. Let's explore the expectations surrounding fidelity in Viking society. It might surprise you to learn that these expectations were not as one-sided as many assume. While husbands were indeed expected to remain loyal, infidelity was not brushed off with a casual boys will be boys mentality. In fact, a married man found cheating faced serious consequences. He risked humiliation, legal troubles, and depending on his wife's temperament, the possibility of a rude awakening, perhaps a splash of cold water, a missing beard braid, or a sharp reminder of his responsibilities. Affairs were taken seriously in this society because they threatened the stability of entire clans. A child born out of wedlock could disrupt inheritances, ignite feuds, or create social chaos. Viking laws clearly stated that adultery damaged reputations, and reputation was paramount. A man accused of cheating could face challenges to his honor, fines, or public disgrace. If he continued to break the rules, the consequences could escalate, sometimes even leading to violence. But here's the twist that often surprises people. Viking women enjoyed even stricter protections. While a woman caught cheating faced heavier penalties, she also had a unique legal escape route. If her husband was neglecting her, failing to provide, or bringing romantic distractions into their home, she had the right to divorce him. This meant she could leave the marriage legally, publicly, and even with a sense of pride. Isn't it fascinating to consider how these dynamics shaped relationships in Viking culture? The sagas are rich with stories that illustrate powerful moments in history. Consider the tale of Gudrun Oyfa's daughter. She boldly confronted her unfaithful husband, delivering lines so striking that they echo through time, much like legendary mic drops. Ultimately, she divorced him with full legal backing. Then, there's the remarkable story of a woman who not only ended her marriage with a cheating spouse, but also challenged him to a duel after he dared to tarnish her honor. Can you imagine your ex trying to insult you, and your response is to say, "Meet me outside, weapons in hand"? Viking women were fierce and unyielding. Moreover, they were shielded from false accusations. To call a woman unfaithful without evidence was a serious insult, one that could ignite blood feuds. A man who spread such rumors faced dire consequences. He risked losing land, wealth, or even his teeth, depending on how her family chose to respond. Even the act of flirting was approached with caution. Sitting too closely at a feast, exchanging gifts, or whispering too privately could spark speculation, leading to conflicts. In fact, Viking flirting was not just risky, it was almost a competitive sport. At the heart of these stories lies a fundamental truth. Honor held more weight than desire. Marriage was seen as an alliance, and fidelity was essential to safeguarding that alliance. As you reflect on these narratives, consider what they reveal about the values and strength of Viking women. Imagine a world where the rules of marriage are as strong as the bonds that tie you together. In Viking society, if someone threatened that bond, there were clear paths to resolution. You might be surprised to learn that divorce isn't just a modern concept. The Vikings had their own version, complete with structure and authority, especially for women. In this world, Viking women wielded significant power when it came to ending a marriage. If a woman decided it was time to part ways, she could initiate the process herself, often with a level of authority that many later European cultures would not recognize. Picture this: she could publicly declare her intent to divorce, leaving with her property and dignity intact, sometimes even more so than her husband's pride. The process itself was straightforward. A woman would openly announce her decision, and not in hushed tones. No, the Vikings were known for their boldness. To make her divorce official, she needed to declare it in front of witnesses at significant locations within her home, typically at the front and back doors. This was akin to broadcasting a breakup across all social platforms in just one day. What might surprise you further is that she didn't need to provide elaborate reasons for her decision. Viking law recognized various grounds for divorce, including serious issues like abuse or violence, which were taken very seriously. Additionally, if her husband failed to provide basic necessities like clothing or food, he was not living up to his obligations in the marriage. Isn't it fascinating to think about how these dynamics shaped relationships in a time long ago? As you reflect on this, consider how different societies view marriage and divorce today. Infidelity is often seen as a violation of the marriage vow, a breach that can bring shame to the family. Surprisingly, this is a common theme in ancient sagas. There are instances where a lack of interest in intimacy is delicately noted in legal texts, showcasing the complexities of marital relationships. Women had the right to divorce widowed men if they were found to be incompatible, too old, or prone to unnecessary disputes. The law recognized that a woman should not be forced to remain in a politically inconvenient marriage. Her family's honor took precedence. Once a woman initiated a divorce, she reclaimed her dowry and any personal wealth specified in their marriage agreement. If she had contributed land to the marriage, that too remained hers. Additionally, if she managed the household effectively and enhanced the farm's value, she earned recognition for her efforts. While the husband did not lose everything, he certainly faced social repercussions. A divorced man had to put in considerable effort to rebuild his reputation and find another family willing to accept his history. Some sagas even depict women ending marriages abruptly during heated arguments at feasts or upon discovering unwelcome truths like a secret lover or a broken promise. There are also legendary tales of women challenging their former husbands to duels over slander. Reflect on these stories and the strength they reveal. The power dynamics in relationships were complex, and the choices made by women were often bold and unapologetic. Isn't it fascinating how these narratives continue to resonate today? Imagine a world where marriage is more than just a bond, it's a contract. In Viking society, that's precisely what it was. This meant that marriages could end, and women were not mere property. They were partners, and if a husband proved unworthy, Viking law not only permitted a woman to leave, but practically ushered her out the door. Divorce granted Viking women an unexpected power, but widowhood took that a step further, gifting them the entire longhouse, tied up with a bow. In Norse culture, a widow was not expected to withdraw silently or depend on the kindness of relatives. Instead, she stepped into a role of significant authority, often becoming the undisputed head of her household. Picture this: some Viking men might have turned in their graves at the thought of their wives managing the farm better than they ever could. Yet, this was the natural order of things. When a husband passed away, whether peacefully in bed or dramatically during a raid, fueled by overconfidence and poor planning, the widow inherited complete control of the estate. Not just a fraction or a symbolic piece, but the entirety of it, until their children reached maturity. She took charge of the land, livestock, servants, debts, income, and trade relations. She made crucial decisions about the farm's future, approved marriages for her children, and resolved disputes. Isn't it fascinating to consider the strength and influence these women wielded? As you reflect on this, think about the power dynamics in relationships today. How might they compare? Imagine a neighbor attempting to exploit a widow's sorrow. They would soon learn that Viking widows grieved swiftly and negotiated fiercely. The sagas recount tales of widows who emerged as formidable political figures. Some amassed substantial wealth, while others commanded fleets or orchestrated marriages that altered the fate of entire clans. In true Viking style, many remarried quickly, not out of desperation, but for strategic advantage. A widow could leverage her late husband's estate to forge new alliances, thereby bolstering her family's standing. Here's an intriguing aspect. Widows enjoyed full autonomy in selecting their next partners, while families still offered guidance and engaged in negotiations. A widow's perspective now held significant weight, much more than during her first marriage. Having gained experience, wealth, and wisdom in the intricate dance of survival, she became a sought-after figure. A man pursuing a widow needed to impress her, show her respect, and avoid any missteps. The balance of power had shifted entirely. Often, men would compete intensely for a widow's hand, especially if her land was fertile or her livestock abundant. Yet, widowhood was not solely about power and remarriage. It also commanded a level of social respect. As you reflect on this, consider the complexities of relationships and the resilience of those who navigate them. In a world where life is often short and perilous, the emotional weight of losing a spouse resonates deeply. Widows, who fiercely protect their children, manage their lands, and honor their late husbands, command admiration and at times even fear for their strength. In many respects, widowhood grants Viking women a unique form of autonomy. No longer merely daughters or wives, they become heads of households. They gain the power to choose peace, marriage, independence, or ambition, all supported by the law. Yet, with this newfound authority, arises another question. How are children raised in this intricate world of alliances, honor, and strategic marriages? That's where our journey continues. In Viking society, children are not merely prepared to endure harsh winters or navigate life's challenges. While those skills are undoubtedly valuable, the primary purpose of their upbringing is to carry on the family line and forge alliances through future marriages. From the moment a child takes their first breath in a smoky longhouse, their life becomes intricately linked with clan strategies, inheritance plans, and the ongoing chess match of kinship politics. Boys and girls alike grow up immersed in the rhythms of farm life, captivated by the tales of legendary heroes, and clearly aware of the expectations placed upon them. Viking parents approached reality with honesty and clarity. They didn't shield their children from difficult subjects with vague promises of when you're older. Instead, they explained the nuances of honor, the intricacies of alliances, and the serious consequences that could arise from insulting the wrong person. Children quickly learned that reputation was a form of currency in their society. Girls were instructed in essential skills like household management, textile production, healing, and the delicate art of social diplomacy. These were vital tools for future wives, who might someday oversee an entire estate. A girl who could organize a feast, mediate disputes, and manage supplies effectively was highly valued. Mothers played a crucial role in passing down their knowledge. Daughters learned by observing, listening, and participating. Boys, on the other hand, were prepared for their own responsibilities. They studied farming, trading, combat, and public negotiation. Contrary to modern stereotypes, Viking fathers did not raise mere raiders wielding axes and shouting. Instead, they nurtured young men to become responsible landowners, trustworthy partners, and dependable allies. A young man who engaged in reckless behavior or sought out fights could jeopardize his family's reputation. This upbringing was not just about skills, it was about understanding the weight of one's actions and the importance of honor in a tightly knit community. Imagine a world where tradition and legacy intertwine, shaping the lives of families and their futures. In Viking society, inheritance was surprisingly equitable. Sons received portions of land and wealth, while daughters also gained property and movable goods. This inheritance often became part of a daughter's dowry, granting her significant power in marriage. When both parents passed away, a family council, often consisting of uncles, aunts, or grandparents, would step in, but the estate remained linked to the children. Preparing them for marriage was less about romance and more about legacy. Parents sought unions that would enhance trade routes, resolve conflicts, or broaden their influence. Yet, children were not mere pawns in this game. Their preferences held weight, shaping negotiations, even if they couldn't always overshadow the demands of politics. This dynamic fueled the continuous motion of Viking society. Children grew, families strategized, alliances formed, and marriages wove intricate networks of obligation and opportunity. Amidst it all, love could sometimes flourish, and at other times it remained elusive, yet the legacy persisted. Now picture the Medici court, a stunning masterpiece. Every fresco, velvet curtain, and polished marble floor contributes to a carefully crafted illusion. Florence cherished beauty, and the Medici understood it better than anyone. As you reflect on these legacies, consider how they continue to shape our understanding of family and connection. Would you like to explore more about these historical narratives? You find yourself in a world where ambition and intrigue reign supreme. Beneath the stunning Renaissance facades, the court is anything but tranquil. It's a vibrant cauldron of desire and political maneuvering, masked as polite conversation. As you step into the Palazzo Medici, or the later Palazzo Veo, you can almost feel the tension in the air. It's woven into the very fabric of the tapestries hanging on the walls. Couriers greet you with deep bows and warm smiles, yet their words often conceal layers of deceit. A compliment might be genuine, or it could be a calculated move in a complex game. An invitation to dinner could lead to new alliances or scandals that ripple through the court. Every gesture carries significance, and every whisper holds power. Even the servants understand that silence can be a valuable currency in this delicate dance of diplomacy. At the heart of this dazzling realm stands the Medici family. They are not just wealthy bankers, they are the de facto rulers of Florence, capable of purchasing loyalty and wielding it like a weapon. Figures like Cosimo the Elder, Lorenzo the Magnificent, and Catherine de' Medici each leave their mark on the court. Lorenzo surrounds himself with poets and musicians, while Catherine introduces a network of spies and a pervasive sense of paranoia. Despite their differing approaches, one strategy remains constant: control the narrative, and you control the court. As you reflect on this intricate web of power, consider how the allure of beauty often conceals darker realities. Would you navigate this world with caution or embrace its complexities? Imagine stepping into the world of the Medici household. It's not just a home, it's a vibrant political theater. Each room serves a dual purpose. By day, reception halls are alive with diplomatic gatherings, but by night, they transform into spaces where quiet conspiracies unfold. Private chambers, too, bear witness to tender romances, heated arguments, and secret affairs that can tip the scales of power. Even the gardens, lush and fragrant, seem peaceful at first glance, yet they become clandestine meeting grounds for whispered promises and forbidden encounters. In this exquisite setting, elegance is expected and restraint is mandatory. But beneath the silks and brocades, human desires simmer. Jealousy, longing, fear, and ambition pulse through the air. In this court, those desires carry weight. A careless flirtation can ignite a feud, while a hidden affair might unravel a marriage, a fortune, or a family's reputation. Yet these very scandals can also elevate the astute. Those who skillfully navigate the intricate dance of passion and politics find themselves rewarded. The Medici court stands as a jewel of Renaissance Italy, glittering, beautiful, and sophisticated. But like every jewel, it possesses sharp edges, and many who reach for it end up scarred. From the outside, life as a courtier in this world seems glamorous. Silk robes, opulent banquets, poetry recitals, masked soirees, and strolls through perfumed gardens paint a picture of luxury. But behind the facade lies a complexity that invites deeper exploration. Are you ready to delve into this captivating world? Beneath the surface of elegance lies a harsh reality. The Medici court serves as a battlefield where every courtier is both a warrior and a target. To survive socially, it requires more than just charm. It demands strategy, self-control, and a smile sharp enough to slice through marble. To thrive in this intricate world, one must master the delicate balance of calculated behavior. Sometimes, silence is the safer option, while at other times, speaking out can protect you. A single misstep in conversation during a lavish feast can tarnish a reputation more swiftly than spilled wine on fine silk. Courtiers become adept at reading faces, much like scholars pore over ancient texts. A subtle shift in a noblewoman's posture or a brief pause before a duke's laughter can reveal crucial information. These small details can shape alliances, and standing at court is anything but stable. It changes as unpredictably as Florence's weather. One moment, you may find yourself dining next to a Medici cousin, and the next, you're mysteriously excluded from gatherings. Perhaps you supported an unpopular marriage, offended a notable poet, or, heaven forbid, donned the wrong color on an ill-fated day. Indeed, fashion carries significant weight in this political landscape. If the Duchess favors emerald green this season, wearing ruby red is not just a bold choice, it's akin to declaring war. Many courtiers arrive in Florence with hopes of advancement, seeking a marriage, a prestigious position, a patron, or even a generous pension. The Medici family rewards ambition, but not without complications. Each opportunity comes with strings attached, and those strings can often become entangled. A well-placed compliment to a Medici prince might earn you a favor, but it could also spark jealousy from someone who had just done the same moments before. Even the intellectuals and artists who navigate the court's cultural circles are not exempt from this peril. A careless joke about the wrong classical figure could lead to a reprimand that lingers for years. And then there are the spies. Florence is teeming with them. Ladies-in-waiting, scribes, stable boys, musicians, and perfumers. Many of these individuals are discreetly compensated to observe, report, and sway opinions. Catherine de' Medici mastered this art when she later moved to France, but she first honed her skills in Florence, where secrets are as valuable as gold. Despite the risks, courtiers remain drawn to the Medici court. Here, scandal is not just a danger, it presents an opportunity. A well-timed rumor, a strategically staged coincidence, or a whispered confession in just the right ear can change fortunes in an instant. Behind the velvet curtains and frescoed walls, survival becomes a performance, and those who excel at it find themselves rising to the top. Flirtation in the Medici court is anything but innocent. Imagine a world where every interaction is a performance, played out on a grand stage. Here, spectators feign ignorance while quietly taking notes for later. In this realm, where alliances and reputations reign supreme, desire dances a delicate line between intoxicating allure and lethal risk. Courtiers tread carefully, for a single glance could be interpreted as devotion, insult, or strategy. During the Renaissance, The notion of courtly love flourished, filled with poetry, longing, and beautiful metaphors about burning hearts and aching souls. Yet, in Florence, this romantic ideal coexists with the harsh realities of political maneuvering. A nobleman might recite a sonnet to a married woman, not out of genuine affection, but to gain favor that could open doors into her husband's influential circle. Similarly, a lady might linger in a diplomat's gaze, not from true attraction, but to keep vital foreign alliances alive. In the Medici world, love is rarely without purpose. Every compliment serves a reason, and every gesture conveys a message. Yet, even within these calculated games, genuine passion can ignite. Confessions unfold in secret corners of lush gardens, dimly lit hallways, or private lodgings overlooking the breathtaking rooftops of Florence. Lovers exchange tokens, perhaps a ribbon, a glove, or a lock of hair, each item steeped in meaning and emotion. As you reflect on this intricate dance of desire and strategy, consider the layers behind each interaction. What stories lie hidden beneath the surface? Each secret holds a silent promise, carefully concealed from prying eyes. And there are many prying eyes around. Ladies in waiting share every detail, while tutors and scribes listen intently from behind partially closed doors. Even the frescoes seem to watch, silently judging every encounter. This risk sharpens the intensity of passion. A married woman caught in an affair faces exile, humiliation, or life in a convent. A man exposed in scandal might lose his position, his income, or his political support. Yet scandals continue to flourish like roses in the Medici gardens, beautiful, fragrant, and full of thorns. Some affairs become legendary. Lorenzo de' Medici himself cherished poetry, beauty, and subtle flirtation. His court became a magnet for alluring individuals, renowned across Italy for their charms. More perilous are the liaisons that connect rival factions. A romance between families aligned with opposing political camps could destabilize Florence more swiftly than a failed bank loan. In extreme cases, passion has even sparked assassinations, as the Medici learned during the Pazzi conspiracy. Yet, for every tragic love story, there are also quiet, tender connections that remain hidden from history. These relationships endure the intrigue, quietly thriving amidst the chaos. In a world where frescoes shimmer and chandeliers dazzle, couples often conceal their true feelings to prevent turmoil. Yet amidst this beauty, the brightest light, passion casts the deepest shadows. In the Medici court, marriage seldom revolves around love. Instead, it serves as a means to forge dynasties, create silk-bound alliances, and maintain a delicate balance between ambition and perception. Picture a noble wedding in Florence. Velvet gowns flow elegantly, glittering jewels catch the light, and banquet tables overflow with roasted pheasants and intricately sculpted marzipan. However, beneath this enchanting facade lies a carefully orchestrated arrangement, akin to a trade treaty. Families scrutinize potential spouses as bankers would assess investments, understanding that a strategic marriage can elevate a lineage, secure political power, or even rescue a family from financial despair. The Medici, being bankers first and rulers second, grasped this concept intimately. They arranged marriages with the precision of accountants balancing their ledgers. A bride would bring a dowry of land, art, and prestige, while a groom would offer connections, military support, or access to influential social circles. If affection blossomed later, it was simply a delightful bonus, if not separate chambers provided the necessary distance. As you reflect on this intricate dance of love and duty, Consider the complexities of relationships in any era. Would you navigate such a world balancing personal desires with societal expectations? In these carefully orchestrated unions, harmony is expected, or at least performed. Couples learn to play their roles in public, exchanging polite smiles and synchronized gestures, all while creating an illusion of deep connection. A wife might walk gracefully beside her husband, sharing witty remarks as if they were truly united. Meanwhile, a husband offers his arm during ceremonies, suggesting that their relationship is built on genuine trust. Yet, the reality often feels much colder. Many spouses live parallel lives, intersecting only when politics require it. The expectations placed on noble women are immense, and a bride is tasked with embodying the perfect blend of elegance, modesty, diplomacy, and fertility. She symbolizes her family's honor, with every move closely observed by Florence. A single misstep could spark gossip, and in Florence, rumors spread faster than the Arno during a flood. However, even within these constraints, women possess a quiet strength. A savvy wife can sway her husband's alliances, shape opinions at court, and safeguard her children's futures with just a whispered suggestion. Men, too, are not free from scrutiny. A husband's reputation hinges on his ability to maintain stability. If he publicly humiliates his wife, neglects her, or allows scandal to seep into their home, the consequences can be dire. As you reflect on these dynamics, consider how power and perception intertwine in such delicate relationships. In the court of the Medici, judgments are swift and severe. A man who struggles to manage his own household is seen as unfit to navigate the complexities of political crises. Here, marriage is more than a union, it is a calculated partnership. Sometimes it feels cold, at other times warm, and occasionally it shines with brilliance, yet it is always strategic. When the facade of a marriage shatters, the repercussions ripple through Florence like shockwaves. A broken marriage does not merely break hearts, it dismantles alliances, and that poses a far greater threat. In this world, infidelity transcends a mere lapse in judgment. It becomes a political event. A whispered rumor of a mistress, a secret lover, or a forbidden affair can reverberate through Florence with the force of an earthquake. These affairs are not just romantic diversions, they are strategic hazards, potential weapons and opportunities waiting to either elevate or destroy. As we delve into this realm of silks and secrets, we find that everyone feigns shock at scandals, while secretly reveling in every tantalizing detail. Let's turn our attention to the men of this era. In Renaissance Italy, noblemen are expected to maintain mistresses, provided they do so with discretion and respect. A well-placed mistress can ease political tensions, charm allies, and even bolster a man's reputation as long as she understands her role and adheres to the invisible boundaries of court etiquette. Isn't it fascinating how power dynamics play out in such intricate ways? Imagine a world where the stakes of love and loyalty are incredibly high. If she steps beyond her boundaries, seeking influence or daring to insult a noble wife, the consequences can be explosive. Affairs might spark duels, ignite feuds, and shatter alliances. The wrong mistress could spell disaster for an entire family. In this delicate dance, women face even stricter scrutiny. A noble woman's affair, if uncovered, could lead to exile, annulment, or confinement in a convent. Yet the perils of love and the pangs of loneliness often drive them to take risks. Arranged marriages can feel like polite prisons, and behind heavy curtains and locked doors, women forge deep emotional connections. They write letters, share secrets, and risk everything for fleeting moments of passion and understanding that elude them at home. Some of these tales have become legendary. Take, for instance, the romance between Giuliana de' Medici and Simonetta Vespucci, Florence's most celebrated beauty and muse of the artist Botticelli. Their chemistry inspired art and poetry, captivating a city that adored them. While it remains uncertain whether their relationship was physical, in the gossip-laden streets of Florence, perception often holds more weight than truth. Yet, not all entanglements are harmless. A noble woman caught in a liaison with a rival family's son could unwittingly unleash political turmoil. In a world where love intertwines with power, every choice carries profound implications. What risks would you take for love? Imagine a courtier caught in a web of seduction, quietly vanishing like dust beneath a velvet rug. In this world, ambition fuels affairs, and calculated seductions serve a purpose: to uncover secrets, sway decisions, or manipulate those in power. These encounters blur the lines between romance and espionage, making them the most dangerous of all. Irony reigns in the Medici court. A society that condemns infidelity simultaneously revels in its intrigue. Affairs generate stories, and those stories create leverage that ultimately determines survival. In Florence, survival is the true currency of love. Here, scandal isn't merely an accident, it's a finely honed tool, sharpened by whispers that glide through the corridors, delivered with a knowing smile. Florence thrives on gossip. This small city allows secrets to travel swiftly, and its powerful elite can ruin a life before the church bells finish ringing. Within the opulent Medici palaces, a single rumor can topple a favorite, wound a marriage, or shift the balance of political power, and everyone is acutely aware of this truth. Rumors often begin innocently. Perhaps a servant observes a nobleman slipping into a lady's chambers as dusk falls, or a musician catches two lovers exchanging glances across a banquet hall. These fleeting moments can ignite a firestorm of intrigue, shaping destinies in a heartbeat. Imagine a diplomat quietly observing a heated argument behind a tapestry. In just a few hours, that whispered dispute transforms into a tale far grander and darker, capturing the imagination of all. By morning, the people of Florence engage in discussions about the scandal as if it were a captivating public performance. In many ways, it is. The Medici court resembles a theater where scandal serves as the script. Political rivals wield gossip like a finely honed weapon. If a noble woman begins to gain too much influence, suddenly whispers emerge about a secret admirer. Similarly, if a courtier grows too close to a Medici prince, rumors of financial impropriety might conveniently surface. Here, scandal isn't concerned with truth, it focuses on utility. The more damaging a rumor, the more valuable it becomes. Yet some scandals spiral out of control. Consider the Patsy conspiracy. Driven by political motives rather than passion, it thrived on hushed accusations, calculated betrayals, and discreet meetings amid beautifully frescoed walls. Each participant believed they were engaged in a subtle game until the moment came when daggers flashed within the cathedral. Florence has learned a crucial lesson. Once unleashed, rumors can lead to anything from romantic embarrassment to outright assassination. Other scandals may be softer in nature, but they are no less devastating. As you reflect on these dynamics, consider how the whispers of the past continue to shape the present. Would you like to explore more about the intricate world of political intrigue? Imagine a world where the life of a noble heir is intertwined with the whispers of courtly intrigue. A rumored romance between a lady-in-waiting and a foreign ambassador could ignite fierce family feuds. Picture two people sharing a laugh at a grand feast. Suspicious, isn't it? A note exchanged between cousins might raise eyebrows, hinting at treason. An innocent smile could escalate into an international incident. The tragic truth is that many of these tales are either exaggerated or completely fabricated. In a court obsessed with its reputation, the mere suggestion of scandal can shatter one's standing. A nobleman risks losing vital support. A lady might see her marriage prospects vanish, and a servant could face dire consequences. In the Medici court, truth often takes a back seat to perception. Yet scandal, that is both inevitable and unforgettable. Forget about modern intelligence agencies. The Medici mastered the art of espionage long before the concept of a secret police came into being. In their realm, information held the same value as gold, and it was far easier to weaponize. Behind the opulent brocade curtains and gleaming marble floors, Florence thrums with a web of watchers, whisperers, letter readers, and informants. Everyday life transforms into an intricate dance of surveillance. What stories might unfold in such a charged atmosphere? As you ponder this, consider how easily truth can bend in the face of ambition and desire. Imagine a world where secrets swirl like shadows, where every glance and sigh carries weight. In this realm, everyone is both a watcher and a watched. The ladies in waiting serve as the unofficial spies of the palazzo. They accompany noblewomen throughout their day, dressing them, entertaining them, and discreetly reporting every subtle detail to the right patron. A heavy sigh, a sudden blush, or a fleeting glance at the wrong man, nothing escapes their keen observation. They are the velvet-wrapped eyes and ears of the court, gathering secrets while appearing to simply arrange jewelry. Servants, too, have access to the most intimate spaces: bedrooms, powder rooms, private gardens. A whisper caught while refilling a wine cup can alter political alliances by sunset. Stable boys listen in on passionate arguments between lovers, slipping in and out of the shadows. Cooks discover smuggled love notes tucked between loaves of bread. Even perfumers take note when someone orders a fragrance designed to mask the scent of a secret rendezvous. This intricate web of information is not by chance. The Medici themselves fostered this environment, relying on a network of informants to uncover plots and thwart uprisings. Cosimo the Elder was renowned for his diplomatic listening skills, while Lorenzo the Magnificent maintained correspondence so detailed that modern historians are still in awe of his expansive network. So, as you reflect on this world, consider how secrets shape relationships and power. What hidden stories might be unfolding around you? Catherine de' Medici, who trained in Florence before becoming a ruler in France, transforms espionage into a true art form. She employs coded letters, invisible ink made from lemon juice, and informants hidden within every royal corridor. Her formative years in the Medici court reveal a harsh truth: love and betrayal often coexist. In this clandestine world, handwritten notes serve as the lifeblood. They carry affection, threats, negotiations, and heartfelt confessions. Yet, these letters come with significant risks. Rival factions bribe scribes to unveil their contents. Trusted messengers might deliberately misplace them. Some nobles even resort to steaming open sealed letters with heated metal spoons. This is Renaissance espionage at its most refined. A single poorly phrased sentence has the potential to ruin a reputation. Privacy is a luxury that no one truly enjoys. Even locked doors provide only the illusion of security. There is always someone who knows something, someone who watches, and someone who listens. In a realm where secrets flow like wine, True power lies with those who control the information, or those who leak it at just the right moment. In the Medici court, betrayal transcends personal grievances. It becomes a political disaster, often with fatal consequences. Imagine stepping behind the luxurious velvet curtains and radiant frescoes of Renaissance Florence. Here, the stakes of love and loyalty are perilously high.